Okay, we're good.
We're ready to roll?
Yep.
Well, we'll call this meeting to order. The Heartland 2050 RPAC meeting. Heartland 2050 is a community-driven initiative pulling in stakeholders from across the region to think big, work towards a common vision for our 6-county region anchored by Omaha Council Bluffs Metro. Keywords to that, in that to me are thinking big, common vision, and initiative. So instead of doing what as we introduce ourselves, instead of doing what we usually do is with something sports, I was wondering, how y'all had the Final Four coming out, men's and women's. We'll do something different. So today you will find out we'll find out your MAPA name. Okay. So introduce yourself, and your MAPA name is your middle name and the street you grew up on. If it's a number, that's fine too. So for example, my MAPA name is Lavelle Ruggles. And so, but also known as Key Station, work for City of Omaha Mayor's Office, and proud to be the chair of this subcommittee. So I am Lavelle Ruggles. So please feel free to be vulnerable today and say that Ruggles Street is in North Omaha. And thank you. Chris.
All right, all right, I'm gonna go with my street that I grew up on as a young child.
Okay.
So it would be, middle name is Nicholas, and that street was Von Steuben, so it'd be Nicholas Von Steuben.
Oh, that's distinguished.
That's good.
Nick Von Steuben.
I think you have a new internet handle. That's like a new handle for all your social
Right.
media.
But also, who are you for real though?
I'm Chris Gibbons, and I'm the city council as planning manager, so my team and I focus on current long-range plannings for the city council.
I'm Matt Wyatt with Potawatomi County Planning Department, and my MAPA name would be Franklin Myrtle.
I'm Jeff Spieth with Leonard Brand Anderson. I'm chair of the Housing and Development Committee. And my name is James Linden in Kearney, Nebraska.
I'm Bruce Fountain, Community Development Director for the City of La Vista. My name would be Alan Arcadia. Grew up in Mexico, Missouri.
Mike Helgerson with MAPA, and I would be Jay Elmcourt.
Sounds like a fancy law firm. I would retain you.
Injured?
Laura Dietrich, Douglas County Planning and Zoning. Mine would be Kayleen 54. Sounds not like. Sounds not like what I am.
Let's get that back on the minutes. Don't put that in the minutes.
Ken Holm, Douglas County Environmental Services Director. Mine's gonna be a little different. It's gonna be Edward Route 1. That's not sweet.
Edward brought one.
Mike McIntosh with Lamper Anderson and committee chair for the infrastructure committee, and mine would be Patrick Pierce.
Leland Jacobson, City of Bellevue, repping Bellevue. Mine would be Landy Bellevue.
My name is Chris Meeks, and I'm going to go off script just a little bit. I'm new at OPPD in the Government and Community Relations Department. So I'm Michaela's team here. So this is week 6, but I've come in with a planning background, so this is somewhat my comfort zone here. So, but my MAPA name, since I guess this is my first meeting, I'll be William Birchwood.
Nice. Welcome. If you roll with Michaela, you're good with us. Welcome.
Thank you for that. So Michaela Valentine, OPPD Government Affairs, and my MAPA name is Lynn Frederick.
I know Lynn Frederick. That's great.
Mike Jensen, Cass County Planning and Zoning Administrator. My MAPA name would be Jude Sunshine.
Oh.
I see you right over there.
You're not living that down, Mike. So don't make anything up. Be real,
You want a new car?
I'm City Fund Support Information Officer with MAPA, and my MAPA name would be Carrie Highview.
Charlie Harrington with MAPA. My MAPA name would be Alexander Hillcrest.
Yes.
Not him. Laura Heilman, Communications and Outreach at MAPA. I would be Marie Bigelow Park Circle. Not quite a Route 1, but we're coming.
Saul Lopez with MAPA, and mine would be Jonathan Libertad, which means freedom. So Jonathan Freedom.
Work.
I'm Shane Habersham. Most of you know me as,
Very appropriate.
most of you know me as Sport Barber, Transportation Planning with MAPA. That was it. I did it.
Got it.
Starting with it.
Carlos Morales, Transportation and Data Manager. Mine will be Rodolfo, Route 7. Very. That's it.
Michael Blank, sadly mine is not as interesting, it's just Lambert 125th.
Lambert 125th.
Jim Warner with MAPA, mine would be William Birchwood.
Did you get close with MAPA? Mine would be Emmanuel 142.
Grant Anderson, I'm the Community Development Manager at MAPA. My MAPA name would be Austin County Road E33.
Well, I don't think I can top that, but I'm Ryan O'Sell, I'm a Community Development Planner at MAPA, and my MAPA name would be Thomas Crimson Leaf.
Tim Adams with WSP, my MAPA name would be James Ash.
Christine Stokes, Development Services Director for City of Gretna, and my MAPA name is Renee Victoria.
I'm Angie Winquist, the mayor of Glenwood, and my MAPA name would be Marie East Cedar from Messina.
Thank you, Mayor. I like that.
Hawks.
Like that. I didn't like that.
Mark Norman with the Greater Omaha Chamber, and my MAPA name would be very British. I would be Andrew the Sixth.
My name is Braden Hicks. I'm an economic development intern for Mark at the Greater Omaha Chamber. My MAPA name would be David 33rd Street.
Good morning, Eva Roberts with Front Porch Investments, and my MAPA name would be Lorraine Marquez.
I'm Meredith Dillon with Blair Freeman Group, and my MAPA name would be Francis Rural Route 1.
Chris Shuchuk, Washington County. My MAPA name would be Middle or Mark. And one of 10 different places I lived until I was 18. 10 different streets. I live in Mary Mallory Coombs Memorial Way.
So, good morning. As you introduce the real person that you are sharing your MAPA name today, which is your middle name and the street you grew up on, or one of the streets you grew up on. That's what the names. We got a Jude Sunshine and a Shane Habersham. On fire today. So please.
All right, I'm Lindsay Neiman with UNMC, and mine would be Marie 7.
Marie 7 sounds like a saint.
Yeah.
So, my name is Vicki Quates Barris with the Empowerment Network. And my MAPA name, if I'm following this correctly, would be Vicki Sprague.
Well, Vicky is what's your middle name?
Joe.
So you would be Joe Sprague.
Okay. I'll take
That's
it.
pretty good.
Joe Sprague.
Sounds like a movie star, baby.
Okay.
Let's hop online. Let's start with Terry. Terry, can you hear us?
Excuse me, yes. Terry Hawk from MOAC, and it would be Lorraine Urig.
Nice. Ashley.
Morning, everyone. Ashley Ray Turner, M Space in Lovegren, and the Equity Engagement Chair, and mine would be Raylene Roanoke.
And Elsa. Elsa, are you there? Can you hear us? Okay. Well, you are not off the hook. We will come back to Elsa and get her.
No, here I am. I couldn't unmute it. I'm Elsa Ramon Aranda. I'm the state director for the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, in Nebraska. I have no middle name because my mother was very traumatized by my birth. So I'm going to go with Elsa Laredo.
Thank you for sharing that. And I was going to say, if you don't have a middle name, use your first name. So that's a great default. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
We've learned a lot about each other today. And this meeting is adjourned. No, so, well, thank y'all. We need to approve the minutes from the last meeting because we couldn't do that. So if you, haven't taken a second to look at the meeting minutes, please do so, and I would entertain a motion to approve. A motion by Chris. Second, Leland. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, is there anyone who isn't sure if they get to vote? I want to cross that out there. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for raising that up. Is there anyone else who is not sure if you're, okay, and Eva, okay.
Yes, your vote, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so all of our members vote, all of our current members vote. I believe you will be starting in, well, I can't remember if you're starting now or in August with our first meeting next year, but I'll check on that for you, but. But all the other members vote except for HUD representatives, so.
Great, and I see that Kitty is not here. Who was responsible for making sure Kitty got here this month?
That was you.
Sorry. Okay, minutes are approved and we are good to go. Mike, please save us from the front part of the meeting.
Kitty came to our council officials meeting earlier this past month, so she checked her MAPA box for this week.
Figure we gotta get her MAPA name too, by the way.
That's right. We'll ask her next time. We'll go through a little bit about our budget season. So our work programs are really kind of map a statement of work about what our staff are going to work on for the next year. And it's really kind of this time of year that we start to put really our priorities together. I'm going to talk a little bit about, or I think I did talk a little bit about last time at RPAC about our member priorities and how we
Hang on, I'm on a Zoom meeting. Let me mute it. Give me a minute.
Okay. And in our annual survey that we do with our members and some of the priorities that we have, this is kind of that next step as we get to our line item budget and some of our other budget documents this year. Our work programs were approved by our board in March. And so this isn't an action item on your agenda today, but it's kind of more informational and also letting you know that they're out there for public comment. And so I'll walk through those a little bit.
Give me two for that. Thank you.
So our work program, this is kind of a strategic vision, conceptual framework for how we think about it. You know, we talked a little bit about our strategic plan last year and the vision that we got from our board. This is our second 5-year strategic plan that we have from our board of directors. And you see kind of that vision that we have from our board about what MAPA should be doing in the community, not necessarily the work, but how we do it, what our goals are, what our guide stars are for how we do this. You have that administrative excellence and mission focus. So really, if we're not a repository for administrative work around the region, you know, that is a really kind of what we are created to do and be. And so that's a really important focus for us. Community partnership and intentional engagement. You're going to hear a little bit about that in some of our other projects on the agenda here today. Responsive and proactive member services, that we need to not just wait for those calls to come in, but find ways of really engaging with our community partners and understanding what the needs are. Trusted and collaborative leadership as a trusted convener. How do we bring people together in forums like this and other forums to talk about regional issues, prioritize, and really understand what is going on in our region? And then this kind of solutions-focused planning, which we see as kind of a catch-all for not just doing planning that we want to see sitting on a shelf, but really focusing on implementation, making sure that the things that we're planning for are achievable and that we really have a work plan for implementing. So that strategic plan is really a guide star for our agency and budget as a whole. In our 2 work programs, the Unified Planning Work Program and the Community Development Work Program, really kind of oversee our functional elements of our Transportation and Data Department, which Carlos leads, and our Community and Economic Development Department, which Grant leads. And so you'll get a little bit more detail here on some of the specifics that we're working on in the upcoming year. I'll give you a brief snapshot of the budget and then answer any questions that you have. So some of the work that we're anticipating, could you click into the presentation slide? Thank you. Community economic development. So one thing that we've talked a lot about at RPAC is our new focus on community needs assessments and strategic plans. We piloted this program with Valley over the last year, and we've been really seeing a lot of success with that. We're going to be looking to do more of those across the region. So if you or your community or your organization has any interest in that, reach out to Grant. Always happy to talk about that out. Grant writing and administration of grants for communities. This is our bread and butter. This is kind of what we're doing on a daily, monthly basis for our communities. We administer the Potawatomi County Housing Trust Fund and a workforce housing fund up in Blair that has built 13 units today and will have built 17 by the end of the current agreements that we've had on that front. Continuing our focus on brownfields coordination, and then also kind of a snapshot of our revolving loan fund partnership with the Nebraska Enterprise Fund really kind of through the end of last year, and some of the loans that have been made to small and micro businesses across the region. So while it's Nebraska Enterprise Fund, we've been making loans in Douglas, Sarpy, Potawatomi, and Millstown. On the transportation side, I'm not going to go into too much depth here because you're going to hear a lot from our teams on the specifics of this later in the agenda, but really a tremendous focus on safety and leading some regional projects, whether those are mini grants that were awarded to our members, kind of requests that they had of MAPA to lead efforts on their behalf or to procure consultant services, or projects like Safe Streets and Roads for All, which we talked a lot about in this forum and you're going to hear more about later on the agenda. Finding that balance between how we resource planning, both with funding and with our staff time to administer those grants and those consultants, but then also leading efforts like Safe Streets for All to really kind of have that guide star of traffic safety in our transportation planning process. Climate action and resiliency plan. So the city of Omaha is leading their own climate action and resiliency plan. We are supporting that. We are also a sub-awardee of that broader effort through EPA to do a regional strategy. We had an initial document that was due here in March. Is that March, February? March. In March, feels like longer ago than a month. And that initial work product kind of sets the stage for what will be our comprehensive climate action plan that will be coordinated with the city. They're going to be delivering kind of some of their final deliverables here over the next 6 to 8 months. We're going to be mirroring that with some regional outreach to understand what our vision is on that front for the region as a whole, and making sure our communities have access to all of those resources. Leadership and data resources. You work with MAPA, you know that we do a lot of mapping, a lot of data analysis, and so we're going to be working on functional classification. It's kind of one of the things that we do after each decennial census, updating the context of roadways. The guidance has changed, really understanding what roadways are doing today and making sure that each roadway that is federally eligible makes sense. Ones that aren't, making sure that we go through that process and understand the implications of our urban area boundary update. A regional housing market value analysis. This is a project that we've been talking about over the last couple of years to really kind of provide a shared framework across our 6 county regions, almost like a small housing study off the shelf that people can tap into, both on the community side for planning and understanding kind of needs, and also for folks that are applying for NIPA or IPA funding, kind of doing almost a pre-application, helping prioritize, helping have this kind of shared messaging across the region. It's a product that was recommended out of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment that was led by Sherwood Foundation and a really kind of philanthropic partnership that led to Front Porch Investments. Thank you, Eva. And so all of the work there in terms of kind of getting this shared framework for housing investment, we really see this data piece, this monitoring piece as the part that MAPA can really help contribute to. And then support for GIS departments throughout the region. They really help us do our work on a daily basis. And so we fund them in really some specific ways and some cool projects that I hope we'll highlight here as we get into them, leveraging AI and some machine learning here for next year. And then regional collaboration. You know, we talk a lot about training in this venue, things that we're trying to bring to the region, questions that we know that communities have about opportunities. Last year, we did some focused webinars on the urban tree canopy program and trying to build support for either a regional application or making sure that our applications across the region were coordinated, and kind of spoke from some of the coordination that had gone on to things like the Western Douglas County Planning Collaborative and the Mills and Cass County Planning Collaborative, kind of this framework of and shared stakeholder involvement, economic development partners coming together, really trying to understand how, where we see our priorities kind of in the short term, but then really kind of a strategic framework, a routine meeting just to keep people in the room. Mills and Cass County is new. We've had, I think, 1 meeting and 1 meeting scheduled here coming up, but really thinking about that cross-state, that bi-state aspect, and really a focus on resiliency and economic development in those communities where those opportunities might be. Supporting OPPD and emergency management partners on some coordination around ice jams in the Missouri River and making sure that our framework and response framework is updated there and that we have a good work plan. Taking a hiatus on that for now, kind of waiting until the weather cools off again, but some good coordination. So I think some great conversations about what that coordination needs to look like and the impacts to some of our partners. And then continue to, you see Saul and Laura facilitating some of our committees. You hear about that on a bi-monthly basis here at our Regional Planning and Advisory Committee. So our budget, just a snapshot here, and I think kind of for all of you, you can go and you can look at the budget, you can see the line item, you can see where all these things come in. From a governance standpoint, just kind of the MAPA business model. On the transportation side, we have a tremendous amount of federal funding available to actually support our work on an annual basis. On the community development side, it's more based on dues and member services and things like that coming in. It's more local revenue to support those activities. And so it's just sometimes people ask, well, how does Where does MAPA's funding come from? Well, it really depends. Depends what we're doing on the transportation side, a lot of federal support in that metropolitan planning organization role. On the community development side, a much smaller share of federal funding, but a larger share of state funding as our economic development district funding and council of governments funding of Iowa and Nebraska comprise a much larger share of that budget. So just a snapshot there. I'm not going to bore you with pie charts on Friday. So one thing to note, our UPWP, our transportation work program, has a 30-day public comment period. Our board opened that up this past month at their board meeting. So if you want to provide any formal comment to that project, it's due. It's being reviewed by our state and federal partners, and our final is due by June 1st. I expect that some of the contracting opportunities will likely change between now and then as we get a little bit clearer understanding of what resources will be available into the next year. But both that and then our regional planning affiliation 18, kind of for the rural part of Iowa that we serve. So that's Harrison, Shelby, rural Potawatomi County, and Mills County. Very similar priorities to what I covered here in the Unified Planning Work Program, but much more focused on, I would say, kind of traditional maintenance of facilities. That's where a lot of those resources go: roads, bridges, and trails. So those work programs comprise, a pretty, not our entire budget as an agency, but really where most of MAPA staff activities get directed. And that fiscal year for us starts on July 1, goes through June 30th of next year. So if you have any questions, comments, input on MAPA's activities for the upcoming year, let us know. Otherwise, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Has the board, I'm sorry if you said this, has the board seen this draft priorities?
Yeah, so with the bi-monthly RPAC schedule, this was the first time we had the documents and we could show them to you. The board has opened them up for public comment. They approved them as drafts in the March meeting. We'll take another look at them in May. So again, the June meeting, just a little bit off our budget schedule. We'll have had our final board approval of our budget by that.
Great, this is helpful. I think that we have an opportunity as a region, as those of us who work in these various sectors, to normalize and push out public input opportunities. This is low hanging fruit. I mean, I think I run into people often that, are saying, how can we get more information? And how can we give input before it's too late, kind of thing. And so I think it's good for us to make sure we are encouraging groups and community to weigh in on public comments, because we do take those things into consideration, whether it's a city council meeting or a county board meeting or these things or something the planning department is doing. Let's normalize more public input and make it easier and push it out as far in advance as possible. So I hope that, this doesn't fall on or this doesn't go missed, that we have a public comment for something that is important and also it matters, everyone's voice matters, whether you're a resident of the community or whether you are a stakeholder because of who you work for or a neighborhood association or a nonprofit organization. Public comment is wanted. It's not just for the folks who work in here. And let's get that word out. Let's normalize that.
Can I add to, if it's possible to send those to me as well, so I can put those on, whether it's our village connector or anything that we may send out. Because I think that's another way to kind of steer people towards those opportunities to provide comment.
Yeah, we would love it. Thank you, Vicki. And just one note on that, as Keith noted, we try to provide as many opportunities for public comment as we can. We don't get a ton of input. Sometimes we do open houses and things like that. It's hard sometimes because it does feel like it's very late in the process. But I'll say this last round of project selection for our TIP, we got a little bit of media coverage on that project. We ended up with close to 300 comments on 317 comments on the projects. And I think that's on the agenda today, isn't it? It is. Okay, well, I'm burying the lead. I apologize. But anyway, the point is, we're always looking for new channels and opportunities because sometimes it's hard for our stuff to get picked up. So partners helping us amplify that message.
And if you can put something that's more like, I hate to say, but eye catchy, because that's not eye catchy.
Oh.
So they will. Something that is more relatable, like why they should either click or look at it a little bit more that could relate to them or impact them. So just an FYI.
No, I appreciate that, Keith.
What other questions for Mike do you have?
Mike, on that regional housing market assessment you guys did, how in depth is it? Is you just talking about the gaps that we have here, just talking about absorption rates? And I'm asking that question because the city council loves to have a lot of land.
Yeah.
And one of the questions we always get from developers is, how soon will this stuff lease up if we build it, on what's going on downtown Omaha? And so does it talk about some of that information?
Yeah, so we actually had a great conversation with your housing coalition over there in Council Bluffs about that exact question. So there's kind of three threads to it. There's sort of this traditional housing study type data, census type data that we look at and really looking at, sort of what you would find about vacancy rates, and age of housing, condition, and things like that. The second part is local administrative data. So there's things that the city collects around maybe code violations or other things that maybe indicate a neighborhood's trajectory in a way that's meaningful to sort of an evaluation of what comes out of it is really kind of typologies of neighborhoods, and that we have that kind of harmonized across the region. And the third piece is really that housing market piece, and that's kind of the proprietary data that we don't have access to on a routine basis, where you're looking at sale prices, you're looking at some of the churn in the market, the change directionality in the market. And it's really combining those three things. So leveraging kind of the census data, the market data, and then that local administrative data to really kind of get a better sense of, are we concerned about the direction? Is something declining? Is something accelerating? Are there places that maybe we're concerned about gentrification or displacement, or even having a way of having a policy framework around those kinds of issues? That's really where we see having this commonality across the region is really important. On the market side, though, what we heard is that were we to have this would comprise a very large portion of things for like LIHTC applications, MAPA, IPA applications for grant funding and lending. So we're hopeful that there's kind of a cross-sectoral reach in this, and we've had a lot of conversations with philanthropic partners over the years as well about having this kind of shared framework for local government policy, some of the giving that happens, but also then for state partners to say, this is an opportunity for us to invest.
I think that's good because I can see us then providing like a link back to that study with requested proposals for our land. So really appreciate you taking that on because that helps us out a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question.
Thank you. One other question.
All right. Well, thank you all. Only two pie charts, Vicki. Next time I'll
He did specifically ask me to make it pretty, so.
I tried.
You can use it.
Next, Michael Blank is going to talk about the mini grant selection committee.
Yeah, so speaking of project selection, we're talking about the mini grants. So basically the mini grant committee, which met back in March 27th, this year to discuss sort of the which project to fund. It oversees the Heartland 2050 mini grant, as the name might suggest, which is essentially basically a set aside of the regional surface transportation block grant, or STBG program. We use these funds specifically to try to serve to sort of move forward the Heartland 2050 vision. There's about 330,000 per year. However, since we usually do project selection every other year, that's usually about double that amount. And then of course it's split between Iowa and Nebraska with separate budgets based on their STBG allocation funds. So, and then there's more information, of course. There's usually 2 volunteers from RPAC, 2 volunteers from TTAC, and then 1 from MAPA, which form the 5 people that end up being the voting members on this committee. The 2 from RPAC were Jeff Spies and Christine Stokes. Next slide. So essentially, this is basically the structure of the different committees for MAPA, and as you see for the mini grant, it is one of the few project selection committees that is essentially overseen by both RPAC and TTAC. So as a result, it gets members from both RPAC and TTAC to vote on which sort of funds to recommend, as well as RPAC and TTAC both recommend basically these funds to the board to be then spent for these programs. So here's the current schedule. As I noted back on March 27th, we had the mini grants sort of committee meeting, sort of select these projects. We then at this meeting, and then of course at TTAC later on in April, we're going to have the sort of review and sort of recommendation of these mini grants to the board. This will be then, I believe, tie back into the sort of tip, sort of creation of the tip, which will then go to the board for approval on June 27th. And then we'll distribute the award letters and the funds to the projects in July. So this is sort of the overarching sort of a lot of the visions that for Heartland 2050 and in our LRTP that eventually go into some of the rubric for the project selection for the mini grants, which is of course access to opportunity, talent attraction and retention, economic growth throughout the region, and stewardship of our transportation system.
Like, what's the tip?
Oh, tip, sorry. So the tip is the Transportation Improvement Program. It is the overarching, basically spreadsheet is sort of what it is that sort of keeps track of all the different federally funded projects in our region. Basically, so you have both, it keeps track of both like projects funded by state DOTs and other state funding sources, the MAPA funds, which is the Heartland 2050 mini grant, as well as a few others, and then some other sort of state and federal sources that might come into the region. So here's the scoring rubric for the Heartland 2050 mini grants. As you can see at the top, we have the sort of the scores based upon those criteria about sort of access to opportunity, talent attraction, retention, and other such subjects. We then have sort of the alignment with any existing local comp or sort of local plans with those sort of jurisdictions that submitted those projects to the mini grant committee. We then have whether or not it's identified in any regional bike or ped plans, such as a plan by MAPA or City of Omaha or any other sort of regionally significant plan. We have whether or not it links to sort of major sort of employment centers, education centers, medical centers in that sort of community, as well as whether or not it improves equity, whether or not it's sort of regional plans based on sort of the merit they give us, as well as sort of the amount of local match, which we give more points if, of course, they ask for less local match, just so you know, if they're asking less funds, we give them more points since they're trying to put more of their funds forward as collateral for the project. And then, of course, we have some points as well as whether or not it's sort of a multi-jurisdiction or a collaborative effort between sort of jurisdictions, trying to show that they're, you know, they're working with other communities in the region trying to get this done.
I have a question. Do you ask how they will sustain the project beyond the funding?
At the moment for the rubric, no, we do not. I know the discussion about sort of future maintenance has been one that we've been talking about. I know with pros with sort of the larger STBG funds as well as TAP and some of the other funds we administer, we recently added in a few maintenance calculations. This is a older rubric, which we have yet to add that in yet, but definitely for the next project selection, we'll try to add in sort of a maintenance component to it as well.
And I think Vicky as well.
I'd like to add that for most of the projects that apply through this funding program, they're planning studies. So there wouldn't be any ongoing maintenance. They would kind of, they might demonstrate that during the study, but for the most part, they're not building anything, so they don't really need to show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I would say that the sustainability, that's why that important question about is it in a local plan, is it a locally identified priority is so important, because if it's something that's sort of dreamed up, how much local support is there for that kind of idea versus was there a community engagement process to identify this need, like a comp plan or some other plan? That's where that evaluation criteria comes from.
So anyways, we'll move into sort of the summary of the projects that we sort of end up receiving this project selection cycle. So we had 6 of them. Essentially, we had one from Valley, which was sort of an intersection traffic study at the intersection of 270th and Meigs. From Metro Transit, we had the climate action and resiliency plan. We had from Bennington, the Bennington Trail and Park plan update. And then from Douglas County, we had a similar sort of basically a plan update from Douglas County for the Western Douglas County region. We had an Omaha Safe Routes to School program. And then from Council Bluffs, we had the Council's Planning Environmental Linkages study. Basically, we basically calculate scores based on the total amount of points you could have received in that rubric versus the amount of points you ended up receiving, and then put that as a percentage. And then we also put that, of course, the request in 1000s on the sort of right side. As you can see, the total requested down there for Nebraska and Iowa, with the basically amounts available from Nebraska and Iowa split basically by solid amounts there. One thing I will note about this is that since this is sort of a recommended set aside for STBG, that they can go over that amount, of course, which is what ended up happening for this project selections. They slightly went over to fund these projects, which the mayor and committee ultimately decided they wanted to fund all of them. So there was a slight amount over there, but because we have available amounts on both the Nebraska and Iowa STBG pools, we are able to, of course, fund all of these. So for public comments, this was the handouts I put at the front table. This is the feedback that Mike was getting into for this project selection, where due to Court going to sort of the media might be came to you, I guess, but essentially we were able to get 317 comments from the public. Not all of those, of course, were related to the mini grants, but I basically split out 2 sheets, one for the total amount of public comments we received from the whole region, and then one for the mini grant project specifically. As you can see, of course, we received a broad amount of feedback for a lot of these projects, whether public talk or whether or not they should be funded. Whether or not it aligns sort of with our sort of goals as a region for LTP, as well as whether or not sort of impacts disadvantaged communities. Overall, as you can see, for all mini grant projects, they received generally broad approval by the public when they put it in comments for these projects. As well as, of course, for the project selection as a whole, we look at the sort of regional summary for all projects. Pretty much all the projects need broad support with, of course, a map on the other side of that page, where we're showing where in the region we sort of receive those comments geographically.
Like, what are these jurisdictions represent the boxes here?
So that map, which is the sort of regional summary, it basically shows how many comments we received for those sort of different areas in the region. For the amount. So for example, you notice that out in sort of Western Douglas County, Western Omaha, you have all 37 comments that were received to us for project selection.
So this is, oh, but it says, read the key, this is by zip code. Okay. This is good, super informative.
Michael, do you want to talk about the communities that are eligible for mini grants in our SDBG funding? We didn't talk about that at the top. Or the jurisdictions that are eligible for the funds.
Yeah, so because this is a set aside of Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, it has to be it basically has to be eligible under that program. So it's primarily municipalities that are eligible. Basically, it has to be government agents. There's room for, I guess, like some partnerships there, depending on what the agency is, but for the most part, we ask for government agencies to submit applications. So it is kind of a limited applicant pool. There's not anybody can submit, but even if it's sort of a the NRDs, those would be a good example of they're a government agency. They're not a municipality. They're also eligible. So like it's not just the cities and counties, but for the most part, that's usually who we see applying. But yeah, it is, as long as it's a government agency, it can.
And which counties?
And we're primarily talking about Douglas County, Sarpy County, and the urbanized area of Potawatomi County.
So generally council bluffs.
Generally council bluffs.
And the cities of McClellan.
Yeah, so the Potawatomi County boundary is free. We have a slight portion of rural Pot County, sort of on the outskirts of bluffs. Carter Lake, Crescent, and Bellwood. It's the other jurisdictions. So the last slide overall, of course, is essentially why we're here today, which is to get a recommendation from RPAC to basically recommend all these projects as the Migrant Committee also suggested, funding all of them to the board.
And can we just talk maybe to the couple representatives? I just want to say thank you guys very much. I know you had a lot of homework. There was lots and lots of pages that you read through for each project. So thank you for your time on that. Do you guys want to say anything about the experience or?
Well, I just thought it was really interesting to see what was going on in other areas, in other communities around the area. So
I think the projects that were proposed, they had been in conversation for some time. They weren't just sort of chasing, a funding opportunities. They definitely showed the community support prior to this. That was good to see. The kids, like kind of point earlier about engagement, they came from public comment.
and there's obviously communities too that done their homework before they applied for the funding too. So
any other questions regarding?
So with, going over what the set aside was, where's those additional funds coming from?
So all this is, the mini grant sort of like funds generally is sort of a recommended amounts, sort of from the existing STB2 pool that we use, which the SCBG pool currently, in terms of the amount of funds still sitting in there on the Iowa side is about 17 million, and the Iowa side is about 4.8 million or something. And we're essentially asking is we're running over the suggested amount by around 100,000. So from the perspective of the mini grant committee, we do not see that, as well as most of the MAPA staff who discussed this, we do not see this much of a general issue since that was very minuscule, almost around a year compared to the broader STBG pool. So that's why I was recommended for it all.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Any input or questions from the folks joining virtually? Michael, I appreciate that when you walk through it, you showed the org chart that shows TTAC and RPAC and the mini grant process in the middle. That's something we've talked about being important. So I just appreciate that both entities, even with a little bit of overlap, are contributing to that. So, and thanks to the folks who helped to score and help us think through the opportunity. So the total, how much over is that from what was anticipated?
So the total amount of funding I think we have is about 760,000, which is a bit over 500,000 on the Nebraska side, a bit over 200,000 on the Nebraska side, with 70,000 going on the other side. I can go back.
There's a little bit extra on the Iowa side too, because they haven't actually utilized this program in four years. So they actually have a fairly large balance built up under this program. And we've also already, we kind of took this through the project selection committee initially. So we weren't sure if we were going to have them apply through the mini grant program, or if we were going to encourage them to apply directly to STBG. And so it's already been, I guess, kind of worked out on that end, where we've discussed this with folks on the Iowa side and taken it through the project selection committee and kind of talked to them, and they've kind of given it their blessing. So as far as the Iowa side goes, there's a significant amount more just kind of sitting there that's been accruing over the last few years. And then on the Nebraska side, we're looking at, like Michael said, about 100,000, and it really is kind of a drop in the bucket. As we ultimately take this through TTAC and the board, it's possible that they'll have a different recommendation, but we're pretty confident that with the focus and emphasis on getting this kind of planning work done in the region, that they'll have full support for it.
And so today then, do we need to affirm our willingness to recommend going over that amount, or the project selected in the process?
Or basically, sort of, I guess, all of the above. We're essentially just recommending sort of as a base value that you agree with the basically the decision put forward by the mini grant committee, which was to fund all these projects for a total of 52,000.
Yeah, that would be a sufficient action.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that? Do you have a question?
Would a municipality in the future be eligible to apply for more than one project in a grant cycle?
No limit.
I know
The only limitation is how you match the funding. These are still federal funds. We still require 80-20 split. 80% is federal, 20% comes from the local. So as much as you're able to bring together that local funding, that's kind of your limitation.
Yeah, we've had jurisdictions apply for more than one project in the past for some of our funding sources, so it's.
And we did talk at a previous meeting a little bit about the transportation staff being really willing to talk to you about your project and work through your project with you and apply for the right bucket or move funding between different programs as appropriate. So please reach out to staff because they will be your best case in getting this funded for you.
If there aren't any other questions, it sounds good to me. It sounds well thought out. It's in line with the rubric is a solid scientific instrument. It sounds like it's in line with our goals, and I like it. We would entertain a motion to suggest that this is recommended to the board.
Just a kind of a procedural question. Maybe I'm just overthinking this, but the people at the applicants for this grant that are part of this, that are being recommended, is there an obligation for us to identify that as a conflict of interest because our entity is benefiting?
We do not do that. We talked about that internally. Our other committees kind of have, like, our project selection committee is often made up of members with, who are applying for projects. So we just kind of across the board say, that's fine. You're a voting member of this board. We hope that you vote as a board member, not as an applicant, but, or of this committee member. I mean,
think that's important for transparency's sake, that they understand that's the policy going forward. So,
Yeah,
okay,
we,
great, thank you.
in the mini grant committee, I guess specifically also, we had a member from the city of Omaha, which Omaha also applied for funding as well. So I guess we do allow that sort of too.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks for that question. So there is not a need to abstain unless there is a need to abstain. Commenting or making a recommendation. So do we need a motion to vote on this?
just a motion to recommend to the board.
Okay.
As per the recommendation of the committee.
I move that the recommendations made by the mini grant selection committee be approved.
There is a motion.
Second.
Second. Motion properly second. Great, and just all in favor? Opposition? Abstentions? Seeing none? And just again, for the record, who were the folks that
We had a motion by Kent and a second by Michaela.
I'm sorry, who were the folks that reviewed?
Oh, Christine and Jackie.
Okay, okay. So we can chase y'all down if we have other questions. Disapproval? Thank you, okay. Thanks for that. Anything else?
Oh, sorry. I have nothing else for this again.
Thank you. Rachel. Rachel, what was your map name one more time?
Emmanuel, 142nd Street. Yes, I'm Rachel Getch. I'm a transportation planner at MAPA. We have identified a grant that MAPA is in the process of applying for, and so I'm just going to present an overview of what it looks like and how it might benefit our. So it's called the Private Citizen Process Pilot Program, a mouthful. We're looking at a shorter name, but let's just go through it. It's a USDOT discretionary funding source through IJA. It has a max award per project of $2 million. There's no floor. And the nice part about this is that it has 100% federal match. There's no 80-20. You don't have to go and find a local match to support that. Final application is coming up really quick here on May 1st. So we're trying to work through this very quickly and work through all of our committees and make sure they understand what our goals are and the benefits of it. The overall purpose of it is to is essentially enhance our project selection process for different statewide and regional planning efforts. And this might include the long-range transportation plan, the transportation improvement program, safe streets and roads for all the CSAP, and complete streets, as well as other planning efforts in the area. An important part about this is that it includes sustainability, safety, and equity and economic strength considerations, and that is really focusing on trying to enhance those specific projects. This is a little bit of a breakdown on what this might look like as far as outcomes. Our goal as MAPA is that we can increase project selection transparency between us and the public, and also our outreach efforts so that they understand what's happening, how we're selecting projects, what those projects look like, and how those are benefiting the community. Between the stakeholders, public, we want to increase community alignment, make sure those conversations are open and that we're serving the community efficiently. And also between stakeholders and MAPA, there's the application process. We want to be able to increase the ability to process those efficiently, but also to allow for maybe more advanced criteria, so that we can also then, because of those advanced criteria, we're also receiving higher quality applications that we can process. Because of that, this is going to look like in the center of that, you can see all of our different work programs and the discretionary funding. All those work together to really help our ability to be able to apply for these discretionary funding and support those other planning projects. The key part of this is that as we develop this project selection process, it's really gonna improve our data pool and our data ability to analyze that data in regards to the criteria that we're developing. And that in turn enables us to better be more able to promote opportunities to apply for discretionary funding on the federal end. Because of the data, right now through Safe Streets for All, we're working on the safety aspect of that. That's really going to enhance the criteria of safety. There are other considerations in that criteria, including asset and demand condition, or I'm sorry, asset condition and demand. We want to make sure we're serving our communities. How are people getting around? Where do they want to go? And then understanding how that breaks down in the data. And that will really help us to be able to better serve communities if we can take a look at those needs more efficiently on the project selection and criteria. In addition, because of that, we're hoping this will be one streamlined software tool that will be centralized and will basically just be able to go and put in the applications, run it through, come up with the scoring, and that'll really streamline the whole selection process and should really save the community a lot of time and effort. And we should be able to promote efficiencies between the stakeholder interactions and with the public as well. So the idea about this is that we want to be able to do our job better and want to help you guys be able to do your jobs better and more efficiently and come up with better projects that can better serve our communities. So we are asking for committee approval to sign a letter in support, that we would submit with MAPA's PPP application. And also a motion to recommend that the board of directors have a resolution in support of the grant application.
Good job, Rachel. I'm sorry, I don't always have to talk first. First of all, I like this action requested slide because that helps to make it make sense. Thank you, Lord. Could you go back to your first slide that had the ask, the amount? Okay. And so IIJ is Investment in Infrastructure Jobs Act, right? Okay. We like P's in the federal.
We're not sure whether to call it P4 or a quad P or
Quadruple P. Like
Why work on public-private partnerships when you can have a prioritization process by the program?
Well done.
Why not add an extra?
Well done. I see you. So the $2 million award is, how does that break down potentially? Is that the full amount that's eligible for? How does that?
So that's the highest amount that we can ask for from the feds.
Sure.
There's no local match, so essentially that's just as much as we can ask for, as much as we can, unless we want to potentially add in local match, but we wouldn't need to do that, and I think that would make things likely more difficult on the local end.
And I think under the eligibility for this one, states and NPOs are the only entities. So that kind of limits it to just states and NPOs.
So by May 1, then what do we need to know about a project or program we would want to submit? Is it, so the pilot dollars would give us the opportunity to design a program, or do we have a program that we know we want to apply these dollars to by May 1? Do we know what that is?
A little bit of both. We do have a current process selection program, but we want to enhance it. And so what we're thinking currently that looks like is going out and getting a consultant to be able to design a software tool where we can do all of this data analysis and criteria enhancement in one place. We've looked at Arizona's SunCloud, if any of you are familiar with that, where they have a hub all in one spot. They have all their projects and you can just walk through that. It's very comprehensive and it's all in one spot, as opposed to kind of piecemealing a lot of different projects and processes into one. Does that answer your question?
It does, absolutely. Thank you. How much time does $2 million get us to?
That's a great question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're still kind of piecing a lot of it together. We're not exactly sure how much we want to ask for it yet. We know that we we do think it's a good idea to pursue the funding. But it's not totally clear. They released the notice of funding, I don't know, was it in March?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the end of February.
Yeah, it hasn't been open for very long, and we've kind of been digging through the NOFO. Rachel has put together a whole document about like, what we need to do to actually finish the application, like all the pieces that we need to bring together. One of the pieces we need is broad community support, and that's kind of why we're here today, is that without that community support piece, we can't put in a complete application. So we're still, there's not a whole lot of time to put it together. So we don't have a full picture yet. And I don't think we'll have a full picture of exactly what we can do until we get an award and we start working with folks that are, kind of more, that kind of do this day in and day out, that are more focused on developing this kind of stuff. We have ideas, we have a conception of where we want to be, but the funding would basically get us there. Like, it's that middle piece that MAPA's always kind of struggled with in developing our prioritization. And basically what we're asking for is we want to ask for funding to help kind of close that gap. Thank you for that.
So do you not have to have an example of how the funds will be used in the application?
We will. We'll have to tell them what we want to do with it. And we will be able to do that. We won't have a perfectly clear picture of that until we actually write the application. It's in progress, but we are not done yet.
So some funding will be used to secure the consultant. Others will be used for potentially maybe the software that will help to streamline and enhance the process.
It'll be some combination of those things. We're not totally certain how exactly we want to push this forward yet, as far as like, what exactly the tool looks like, because we've talked about doing some in-house solutions in the past. That's basically what we have now. And we would like to see like a completed, streamlined tool come out of this. I guess, I don't know if that answers, that's what we would like to see. We would like to have something that makes it very easy for applicants to go in, evaluate their own projects before, like right now, if a city was to put in an application, it would be hard for them to actually go through and just know what their output score would be. It would take them a lot of time to do that. We would like to be able to let jurisdictions go into this tool and do their own evaluations. But we're hoping that this could even be a tool that jurisdictions could use to evaluate their own internal projects. If we do this, to the level that we would like to, and given the amount of money we can ask for, we think that is possible.
All right, Court, I'm gonna trust you. And it sounds like you're in a kind of brainstorming, exploratory type of stage, so.
Yeah, this is stuff.
We're voting on the letter and the application, right?
Yeah.
One point, another portion of this, I mean, given it's such a large amount of money, we go to MAPA staff time and facilitating a lot of what we're doing here and what we've done over the course of our project selection. Carlos or Porter or Rachel, do you want to talk about kind of the through line of this with the survey we did with committees last year and some of the guidance that we have from certification review, things like that?
So part of what we're really looking at is how do we enhance this transparency piece in the selection process itself? And part of our mandate as staff and from Mike and the board has been, how do we include equity in these conversations? How do we include concepts and both benefits and negatives of certain aspects of a project, right? Our current selection process doesn't do, like, I'm gonna be honest, doesn't do the greatest job, right? Right now, our selection process for projects basically says, are you within these equity zones, yes or no? That is the only criteria we use. We would like to refine that as per our goals and mission and vision to include additional equity investment. To that conversation we had earlier about how do we involve the public? It's a very interesting thing. We're talking about big sums of money and very kind of high level conceptual projects that will not happen within the next 10 years. These are projects and concepts that we're thinking about way into the future sometimes. So how do we engage the public on something that may or may not impact them right away, right? So these are very interesting questions that we're trying to develop and understand and further prioritize within our region. So that's kind of that transparency communication aspect. The tool, and we call it a tool, the aspect behind it is what is it and how are we scoring? Those are the key questions that we're trying to develop and understand, right? When it comes to environmental impacts, right? What are the negatives and the drawbacks behind widening a roadway, right? To put it very bluntly. So we're looking at that. And these are, again, this is not revolutionary. This is not new, or it shouldn't be new. It shouldn't be the first time you hear this. This is ongoing, continuing work that our board, our staff, and everyone's trying to push forward.
It sounds like a capacity building or something.
Carlos, I understand the need for asking for the full 2 million match or max award amount. But is there a minimum that you guys need to get in order for this pilot program to take off?
Yeah, and that's kind of our ongoing work in the next week, trying to like hone in on that budget aspect of it.
I'm planning on putting a kind of a draft budget together next week. When we were just talking about it this morning, we don't think we would ask for less than $1 million. But we're not exactly sure how much we're gonna ask for. I don't know that we would need the full 2 million, but and I don't know. It kind of varies from program to program, whether they would give you a partial award or if they would just not award you at all. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what they're thinking with this, but kind of having seen some of these pilot programs go through before, there's usually something else that USDOT has in mind for the future, like they're kind of like with Safe Streets and Roads for All, like almost, I think most of the MPOs that applied for doing the planning studies, they got what they asked for, because the feds are just kind of nudging us in the direction of, we want you to be looking at this stuff when you're spending federal aid on projects in the region. And I kind of get the sense from this as well that they want better prioritization processes in all of the different regions, and this is another one of those kind of like nudges toward like, we'll give you 100% federal aid to develop a stronger framework for how you select projects. So yeah, we don't have an exact amount that we want to ask for, but we want to ask for a good chunk of change in order to make this work, because there will need to be a large public involvement aspect to it, and that's not going to be cheap. So with all of our experience in putting together the Safe Streets grant and that kind of stuff, and some of the other work that we've been doing recently, it makes sense to ask for some money.
Sure.
But yeah, I'll basically be putting that together next week.
But we're not sure if it's an all or none. They fund, it's either 2 million or they don't give you any.
Right, well, there's not a minimum. They didn't actually, they said you can ask for as little as you'd like to. So they didn't like say that, that they won't award anything below a certain amount. So yeah, I don't think there's necessarily danger in asking for a little bit less. And I don't know. It's always kind of hard to tell. They don't spell out everything in the notices, but.
I would say,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, they talked about how it's only states and MPOs, it's only TMA, so it's only MPOs over 200,000. So it's a smaller subset of larger, more complex regions. So if you think about what a state has to do at a statewide level or an MPO, it's pretty complex. So my sense is most people probably aren't going to be asking for less than $50. That would be my assumption, but they gave flexibility.
And there's only about 50 or so MPOs that fit that criteria. There's another 50 states, so pretty limited pool of people who even can apply, much less who are applying. So we got opportunity.
Sounds like it meets the IIJA aim. That's good intel, Shane, Court. That this is kind of an indicator for what they are trying to encourage or what they want to capture maybe a sample of.
That's the sense I get.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for reminding us that. I have to be honest, I don't like it. I love it, Chris. No, it makes a lot of sense, and thank you, Rachel, you did a good job, doing the research to lay it out. It sounds like we have the capacity, it sounds like a capacity builder, for us. And if we can get it done by May 1 with a budget, it sounds good to me. What other questions do you have, Rachel?
Just need to go through these action items.
So one would be a letter of support from this committee for the application. The other would be to recommend that the MAPA Board of Directors also submit a letter of support in the application. Two separate actions.
And Keith, you would be signing off on that, and I do have a draft if you would like to look over the letters later.
Cool, thank you.
We need two separate motions or fine.
If you want to combine it, that's fine.
Yeah, you could do it as one.
All right, so we would entertain a motion.
I'll motion that we approve both requested actions as shown on the screen for us.
Okay, second.
Christine, great, it's been a motion and properly seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. That's good. I think it's a good idea. Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. We are moving along here. Where's Ryan at?
Right here.
Ryan's up 5210 projects. Did I say that right?
5210.
5210.
I don't know why it's O instead of a 0, but yeah, so basically I'm just gonna give a quick update on the Council Bluffs 5210 project. And so I'm sure most of you are wondering what is 5210 since it's kind of a weird acronym. Basically, it stands for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, 2 hours or less screen time a day, 1 hour of physical activity a day, and 0 sugary drinks or beverages. So primarily it's framework and funding set up primarily for school-age children to kind of learn healthier activities and not just be inactive, looking at screens, eating unhealthy. And the main thought is if you can set them up with, healthier habits early, 1, they will continue those habits going forward, but also 2, they can kind of continue them at home with their parents, in theory, improve the public health. So the 5210 program is through the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services. It's a 3-year funding cycle. We're in year 1. And as a result of being in year 1, we have $24,000 funding to spend on projects throughout the city. Since it's the first year of the project, we have to have a minimum of 3. Each year, the funding goes down a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean it basically little caps every year. And so the main idea is you want to start out a little bit stronger, kind of get sustainable projects either in or kind of continue and find other ways to fund them. That way, in theory, you can continue to fund these past the 3-year funding cycle. So in order to decide how we would allocate our funds and decide on our projects, we created a steering committee, and that was primarily just through preliminary meetings to get interested stakeholders in. So we have people from ISU Extension, Potawatomi County Public Health, the 712 Initiative, like places like that. So the first project the steering committee decided to fund was a water bottle and filling station in Bayless Park. And so we're working with the city's Park and Recs department to basically just set that up and install it. So currently there's no water source at the park, and that's something that came up in the steering committee, whether it be different events like the farmer's market or whoever's hosting something. The people have always asked, is there a place to load my water bottle? Is there a place to go get a drink, especially in the summer when it gets warmer? And so we thought it would be a good idea to kind of set one of those up where people can get drinks, they can fill up their water bottles, even people just using it on a daily basis. This doesn't be an events only type of thing. And so after talking with the Park and Rec department, they kind of recommended that about $10,000 for purchase and installation would basically cover that. So that's how we allocated those funds. Currently finalizing up our service agreement with the city, and then we will hopefully be implementing it in the next couple of months. So the second project, also working with Parks and Rec departments, so that makes it a little bit easier. We're going to be helping to install 2 new wayfinding signs on the First Avenue Trail at both 13th and First Ave, as well as 35 and First Ave. They'd expressed that there were already kind of some signs, but they were definitely outdated, especially with the updates to the trail and access in different locations. And so the updated signs will be able to inform the users, about how far they're going, where they can get off, what points of interest will be along the trail. And so same thing, talking with them, they recommended $6,000 should be about appropriate to cover the 2 signs. And so we allocated funds for that as well.
Our third project, we're gonna work with 712 Initiative, which runs the City Council Plus Farmers Market, to create a new food voucher program to fill gaps in coverage they already kind of exist. So they already, through the farmers market, accept WIC vouchers, which will go 0 to 3 years old, and then also, traditional kind of food stamps. But they kind of recommended that there is a gap from 3 to 18 years old. There's not that. And so what they had kind of proposed, and it's still kind of in the works of how exactly it's going to be executed, is we would create a new program where they could either give out, a voucher or like coins or something along that lines, where families could apply and get, the vouchers, and then exchange them for produce at the farmer's market. And then those vendors that would take it would then bring it back someone to initiative and get reimbursed for them. So basically, it's just a way to get people to eat a little bit healthier, kind of get down the barrier of entry of sometimes it's more expensive to be buying organic fruits and vegetables, especially from the farmer's market. And so we will work with them to basically track how many vouchers they receive, how much they're reimbursing, and then we would reimburse from them. And the steering committee allocated $6,000 for that over the summer. And our final project, this one's still ongoing, figuring out who we're going to partner with, but the steering committee allocated $2,000 to help with community gardens in the city. Currently at Luce and Clark Elementary School, there's already one community garden kind of run by a community volunteer. And so we had thought we can hopefully implement another one at a different school, maybe 2 if the funding allocates, and also different things that. So we're working with the school district to see if there's potential of that. Otherwise, there are a couple of gardens that already exist in the city that we could also partner with to help kind of fund them, whether that be, new, I don't know what you call it, kind of the baskets that, the gardens would go in, or the different seeds, or, things like that. So I don't really have any, I guess, resolutions or anything that needs to be passed. I'm just here to kind of give an update on our work with that. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll ask one question, just, could you talk about the pre-planning and asset mapping that went into this?
Yes, so in order to get the funding, basically the Iowa Department of Health and Services, after doing this for a few years, realized a lot of communities would start right away and not really have an idea of what they should do. And so what they had done was they started now this year, which Mounds also one of 4 communities. You had to go through a preliminary asset mapping process. And so basically we brought in a bunch of stakeholders to say, kind of what are the assets of the community, what's lacking, who are organizations that can help. And we went through all that to kind of determine, what the city's good at, what the city could work with. And then through that process, we were then able to kind of analyze, the different aspects of the city, which then made it easy to set up a steering committee because we already had a group of volunteers that were coming in to give their opinions on things, already had, kind of some strong opinions about how we can improve. And so through that, we produced an asset mapping document. We went through, they had 2, they called them change tools, but it's basically like spreadsheet analysis of different aspects of the city. And from that, we were able to kind of already have a general idea of what we would choose to allocate funds to. And it definitely helped in that regard.
Since you are the Nebraska APA cornhole champion, are you recommending that cornhole is one of the hours of physical activities?
I wouldn't say no to it. And we could definitely look at that going forward as, potential things that install, but I appreciate that, Sean.
And who was the employer of the person who was with you in the finals?
That would be JEO. So, but I did beat my coworker. That's right. Nothing. Finals. So that's. Yeah. Like, you cannot be happy with the record.
Yeah, I see that he's blushing a little bit. Is there more to the story here?
No. I mean, just dominance, I think. Yeah, we got beat by a billion in the second round. Not bitter, but.
In addition to having the planning director from Potawatomi County here today, we also have the public health department director. Matt, do you want to talk about the high obesity grant and kind of Iowa extension and how this stovepipes with maybe other things that are going on in your community?
I was just thinking about that obesity grant, and I have not heard any follow-up from that, but there are several grant opportunities coming down from Iowa Department of Public Health that do tie into a lot of the work that's gone on here at MAPA, and we appreciate all the support that we've gotten.
And I could probably chime in on the obesity grant quick, because I know ISU Extension has been they've been calling them trainings, but we've basically been getting together for 2 hours to kind of, I guess, outline how we could work together to probably implement some stuff. And I know that's kind of something like they had in place before they could start implementing So at least enough to have that. It's kind of in the ongoing process. I think we still have one more meeting before they start trying to implement.
A lot of ecosystem work going on in various spaces, and this is kind of one example of that. Is, 5-year funding. Do you have the framework in place to actually implement it? And the 5210, I think, gives us a good jump start. So.
I just want to say I commend you on where your funding is going, because I think especially 3 out of the 4, the community can really see the impact. When you're talking about water at Bayless Park, and you're talking about community gardens, and I think that last one that you showed as far as like the voucher. So I really commend you for putting those dollars to where people can really benefit from. So.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a good steering committee with a lot of good ideas. So it makes my life easier. I just get to present about it.
Good info. Thank you. Any other questions? Terry, Ashley, Elsa, y'all have any questions or anything? Where can you put a P in there? Can you put a P in P52?
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks, Ryan. James.
All right, very much. And our goal to get every transportation planner up in front of our. So Jim Warner, transportation planner with MAPA. I'm the lead on the Safe Streets and Roads for All program planning for our MPO, and I'm going to give you a quick update. So as a reminder, the Safe Streets and Roads for All is a discretionary grant opportunity for the IIJA. It is unique in that it's funding directly to the recipient, so we are administering the grant for this planning study. And we are a joint applicant with the city of Omaha, so it works in balance with the Vision Zero Action Plan, which they just recently had approved. And have it up there, but really I'd like to focus on the words that are bolded in a different color. So we are focusing on local roads and helping local jurisdictions address traffic problems such that we can reduce and ultimately eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. We're gonna come up with a plan and really more importantly, a process to continue implementing that plan once the planning is complete. And we'll look to provide support to jurisdictions who might have policies. So our study area and our plan covers the areas shown on the map here. And we are excluding Potawatomi County for any reason other than they're coming up with their own plan with that funding source. So we can't overlap in geographies. We'll be looking to provide support for all the communities within Douglas and Sarpy County, and then the 4 incorporated areas within Iowa. So what are we doing with this plan? These are required components of a comprehensive safety action plan. This is our output, our deliverable, and in meeting all of these requirements, it unlocks future funding for implementation using Safe Streets and Roads for All funds, but it also takes really years of best practice from Vision Zero communities that have utilized these tools, taken that approach and found a way to really get buy-in, get commitment, and really kind of starting with that leadership commitment. When we did submit our application, quite a while ago, we did that after getting commitment from a majority of our larger jurisdictions and the counties to commit to 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roads by 2040. So we do have that. We'll be coming back to all of those communities and then the remainder in the coming months, and making sure that engagement is there. And I'm not going to go through all of these. There's quite a bit here, but we're 2 weeks into a 15-month planning project, and we're very excited about it. Kind of tying into a couple of pieces talked about earlier. A lot of our upfront work is engagement. So we're going to be talking to the communities. We're also going to do a co-creation with community partners to really take advantage of. We're not just going to do the outreach by ourselves. We're going to take advantage of organizations that are already actively committed to communities, to their improvement. So maybe they may not be talking traffic safety, but they have a forum and they have the ear of the public. And we're going to go to where they are, ask our questions, and make sure we take that back into the plan itself. So at the end, I guess, when we're done, we have a plan. We're going to be telling people how well we're doing. We're going to be reporting progress and actively committed to finding opportunities for the projects that are identified in the plan. And the final 3 months of the project itself, basically we'll look for, I'll get to that slide in a minute, but we're going to be actively supporting grant applications that get towards projects identified in the plan. So again, we kicked off middle of last month, and 2 separate paths. We have 2 consultant teams on board. We have a data support team that's going to do the analysis, taking a look at and producing something very similar to the high entry network, which you may have seen with the Omaha Vision Zero action plan, and some support in understanding what does that safety data tell us, maybe what safety data do we not have, or things that we can improve upon, and give us recommendations ultimately to have a way to support in-house data processing going forward. So we'll have a plan that we can continue executing by staff alone. And then really that ongoing outreach effort is that a second team that's performing public outreach and development of that comprehensive safety action plan, or CSAP. Have our lead here, Tim Adams, is the team lead. So any hard questions, please, are going to be. And so we're working hard. I mean, we really are very excited about this project. We're very engaged. I'll look at Laura and others in the room. So it is a lot of work. We're very excited about coming to you and providing opportunities for you to give us input and make sure that we put in a plan that works the best for everyone. We'll look to develop a list of projects by this winter and put out a draft plan early in 2025 with a final comprehensive safety action plan in April. And then working again on those implementation grants. But there's a lot of other activities that are ongoing right now. We're taking advantage of a federal highway safe systems approach need assessment for our MPO region. So basically added effort that we can take a look at and really have a third-party consultant come in and USDOT supporting us with that at no cost to our region. So we do have a website for you, a dedicated email address if you'd like to reach out to us. That goes to a number of people on staff, so we'll get back to you. I guess very excited. We've come to this group a couple times to try to tell you what we're going to do. I'm really happy to be at the point where we are doing, and we'll look to keep you engaged as we continue our plan. Yes.
Can you talk just a minute about what your thoughts are on the relationship between Safe Streets for All, Complete Streets, and Vision Zero?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the principles that Vision Zero espoused and grabbed onto have been incorporated, I would say officially, through the National Roadway Safety Strategy and the U.S. Department of Transportation put together. So the Safe Systems approach is a recognized approach that works. That's required for us to follow. And so there are a lot of similarities between the Vision Zero tenets and the things that we have to incorporate into our comprehensive safety action plan. Complete Streets, again, that's just another proven method of getting at safety issues, particularly when we talk about non-motorists or vulnerable roadway users. So again, we have the opportunity. This isn't the only thing that the federal government is putting forth. The states both completed a vulnerable roadway user safety assessment late last year, and really provided information that supplements our planning and helps us get at better things that we kind of knew, but we didn't measure maybe, or we didn't quantify. And I think that's really helpful going forward.
Yeah, and I think part of that was some of the messaging behind Vision Zero. The whole goal was zero fatal and severe crashes, and the main focus is that. This kind of safe systems approach takes into consideration not just your design of your roadways, but the aftercare. How to improve the design is still part of it. I think I missed one last one, but
yeah,
it focuses on a more holistic and comprehensive approach than let's just get to zero. So that's one aspect. The Complete Streets really focuses on the design and enhancement for your vulnerable road users, right? Like how to set aside or develop a roadway network that accommodates multiple modes of transportation, not just honing in on one. This kind of takes into effect all those kind of different things.
I mean, getting at the 5 components of the safe systems approach, I think traditionally we've looked at safer roads and safer speeds, so those design aspects. And the safe system approach, we're not gonna fix everything all at once. We can't possibly afford it, the public won't accept it, but we recognize we can layer our ways to mitigate this, in particular, those fatal and serious crashes. So as you said, the post-crash care is a component of the safe systems approach, and then we're looking at safer people and safer vehicles. So maybe not all things that we will impact directly as a planning organization, but acknowledging there are other ways to improve safety. Yep.
Could you go back one slide? We have project prioritization and draft plan. You're identifying projects that's gonna be metro wide or just Omaha?
We are, yeah, absolutely. Metro wide, they'll be on the local road network.
Will those be the only ones eligible for the future implementation grants?
So
or-
yes. So
Be
we
the
have,
only ones.
yeah, that.
Through this funding.
Through this funding. Yeah, absolutely. So the safety and analysis that will be performed will be on all roads. And so we do work in consultation with our states and we'll work together, but the implementation funds coming out of Safe Streets and Roads for All and a number of other grant opportunities are really looking to get money and funding to local jurisdictions.
You want to talk a little bit about the systemic approach and what that might look like in terms of identifying eligible projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, we can borrow work from our partners. Iowa Department of Transportation in particular has done a lot of work to look at the entirety, all the intersections, all the road segments and take things that we know, traffic volumes, how that roadway is designed and engineered and what current crash outcomes are there, but particularly with vulnerable road users, it's very challenging to say we had this many crashes here, so we have a problem. And what the systemic approach looks at is having that understanding that some things make a vulnerable road user more vulnerable. We look to identify those places before a crash occurs. And they're not all, it's not all roadway design by any means. Lighting is a very important aspect. The area in which you're in, what kind of places would people be walking to or from? Is there more, just what challenges occur or would those road users be, those non-road users be experiencing to mitigate through projects and losses?
So where might we expect more pedestrians or cyclists versus waiting for pedestrians and cyclists to be involved in a crash before we say there's a problem?
Yep. And so, as Rachel pointed out in the prioritization, some of that comes from data. And there are data sets that we could look to make more use of. There analysis tools that are out there that we could look at to help us get out the answers. And I think all those are what might have been, kind of early stages of looking at are really kind of coming into force. There's a UNL study that's ongoing right now that while it looks at the city of Lincoln could hopefully provide some information for our region as well.
And then to your question a little bit, Bruce, like I think part of this is looking for models or project types that can be broadly applied for across the region. So it's not just saying this project in this city at this intersection, it's these types of intersections in our, am I representing that correctly?
You are, and again, to get back, if you think of Rachel's triangle with the plus discretionary grants, there are so many funding sources out there, both state provided, that without having an understanding of how we could apply those. So the teams will be taking a look at that. They're going to look at what are the other funding sources, how can we help jurisdictions identify what's a good project, and then also support their application, but also take a look at what data do we need to be more competitive for those applications as well.
And James has thank you, James, has the next item too.
I do.
And I appreciate the questions and Leland asked a good question too, just to make me think about, and I can see like a Venn diagram of the 3 initiatives and just kind of which things they have in common and how they're unique. I can see that as a way to kind of differentiate as we move forward and borrow some of the tenets from some plans to sort of support. And Mike's question, where does that distill down into priorities and actions? So That's helpful.
Just wanted to add on that last discussion that we are also about to kick off a Safety for All program in the regional planning affiliation 13 and 18 areas. And so those are counties in Iowa. There's 7 cities within those counties. So you'll be seeing that information, but we've got 2 different safe streets pictures on. So you'll be seeing a little bit more of that.
Mike or James, so when you actually do get the draft plan put together, are you gonna go to like the communities, the metro, and like talk about those findings, talk about the recommendations, like? Okay.
Yep, yeah, I think throughout and we don't have to wait until then either. I guess is the point that these teams, part of the data support gives us some flexibility to say, what's a problem that we may identify along the way that we want to know more about, and they can go do some research and give us some recommendations. So we're not waiting until April to start taking action. That's excellent.
And we realize that different communities within our region have different ongoing conversations about what safety means. And so this is the work, right? Going out and meeting people and doing the work that Mike described earlier in our UPWP work, right? Leading some of these conversations, convening multiple groups, maybe regional groups, maybe Western Douglas County collaborative, coming together and talking about these issues. And our consistency in being there and talking about this and bringing data and resources, that's the work that we're doing. And it's ongoing. Like I have bags under my eyes. It's really ongoing.
There's more coming, Carlos. The other piece I would add to that is, you know, Carlos alluded to kind of existing planning efforts, but you know, even just citing the Council Bluffs example, when we did the alternatives analysis in Council Bluffs, you know, we looked at transit corridor, the trail corridor on First Avenue. But a part of that we haven't really operationalized is all of these other improvements to get people to that corridor. I mean, so that had a lot of safety improvements that are going to look a lot like the systemic improvements here. So intaking existing plans, priorities, all of those things, that's a big part of what we're doing here. So lots of touch points.
Yeah, one additional comment is, you know, it's great to have open and transparent selection process. Talked about that earlier, half hour ago. But that also includes not only as the execution to make sure it's executing correctly, but in this context, I'm interested in that if you have a spot of success of one project, how do you close the feedback loop back around so that everybody openly and transparently can find that project that actually worked very well?
So, and that's that planning structure. So that second point is really important. We have known committee structures here. There's going to be a different component. For example, post-crash care. I mean, we don't have on our committees law enforcement and emergency response. And it could be as simple as what's something that helps them do their job better. Or so there are meetings that are ongoing with state and local communities where say, even if we're just going to do road construction, if I slow down traffic on this roadway or prevent somebody from crossing, and there have been instances, especially in communities that have kind of that volunteer fire department response, how does that impact? So that even just coordination of events is something that makes improvements to safety.
Thanks.
Anything else on Safe Streets? Thank you very much. I'll continue taking your time. So the Western SARPI Transportation Enhancement Planner, WESTEP, there's a couple points I want to tie back to. This is a Heartland 2050 mini grant study to look at what really has been identified as a need to take a look at how we make decisions about future roadway improvements or just new roads we're going to have to build in Western SARPI County to accommodate really a rapid growth in the region. So it's strategic. We've known we needed to do it. It's a partnership between Gretna, Plain, Springfield, and Sarpy County, but it didn't start that way. So the application came from the city of Gretna. And along the way, as we started working with Gretna and they worked with their partners, the other communities came on board. We talked about local match. This is federally funded. It does have kind of that Heartland 2050 funding, but it is very much overmatched by those communities to come together and come up with a plan that really gets us to what's the future look like and how do we get there. So we are actively working on kind of looking at what's that framework, and we'll use that word a couple times, but how do we get to where we want to be in an area that there's still a lot of uncertainty on what that development brings and what, as a community, they want their road network to look like. It's kind of a little buried there. The data that inform that decision really is the number of households, the number of jobs that are really going to look at like 6 times what we know now by 2050. This is not just Sarpy County. This is a portion of in the southwest corner. The study area is looking from Tram Road south and 60th Street west to the river, to the county borders. And what you see there are each of the individual jurisdictions represented as well as their ETJ. I'll take and point out a couple things. Along with development, there are other transportation planning activities that are ongoing that do influence this plan. So we supported 3 of these 4 jurisdictions with the Sarpy I-80 interchange Pell study, which is now on to looking at future location for an interchange between Highway 370 and Highway 31. So that separately is looking at reducing what we already have as known transportation problems at those individual interchanges. But the second part was looking at that interconnectivity, that access to the interstate through the region. Long story short, where that interchange ends up has an impact on our plan. So that's part of the scenario planning that's going on with this project. So we talked about where does our input come from? So this is informed by our long range transportation plan and all the community's comprehensive plans or county planning. And it's going back into those plans. So it won't be a standalone plan. The product that comes from this plan will help individuals in each of these organizations make future decisions. And this is what we're looking at. And there's a lot. And with all things planning, there are competing interests here. So we are in the public input process right now, taking that input, getting people's comments. And what is a plan really, I think, on everything to the left of costs, we'll come together and give the consultant opportunity to say, okay, here's maybe the nominal, the ideal future build out, given what we know for growth. Here's how much it would cost, but really here's also things to think about along the way on how you get to that final network. So we are in the tail end of the project. We're in the public input session. We have 4 stakeholder small groups coming up starting this afternoon through next week. I will say utilities is coming up this afternoon, so I'll talk with one of you if I could. I don't know if Michaela put you on the spot, but we are, I'll talk with you, but we are looking to see if we can get an OPPD representative as well.
Yes, I will commit somebody from OPPD for you.
Sorry, on the spot, but it
Hey,
helps.
that's how you do it. Listen, that's our mission statement.
Yep. So we have a plan. I'll show you it on the next slide, but really what comes next is how do we get there? So there's some things as simple as we're going to identify right of way that each of these should start with a right of way that's going to be bigger than the road you need. So there's really, what does that initial road look like? How big is it? What function does it serve? Even just down to what do the intersections look like in that interim phase? And then when do we get to final build up? And there's a lot of complexity to that, and everyone's going to be different. So this isn't just a solution. Here's where everyone's going to go. Here's the intersection. Here's when it's going to change, but it's more of a process. Who are we going to talk to? What are we going to consider? What are some triggers that are going to say we need to go from, say, a 3-lane paved section to maybe a 4 or a 5-lane section, or maybe something divided roadway. So this has been our life. It's been really exciting. This website's been up since the 25th of March. As of yesterday, we had over 409 engaged sessions. I don't have necessarily a direct feedback that we've been given. We did have some good opportunity to talk about the project through the media and that sponsored input, but smart people that do public engagement tell me that the direct input is really the best. And we've seen 43% of our responses come in from somebody going and actively typing in or looking for Western Sarpy and not in response to a link. That's a link to click. So we're excited about that. We'll bring that back into the planning, but I think to the point that the engagement isn't done when this closes on the 15th of April. There's absolutely kind of that process as we go forward and making sure that we're being visible. These projects may come into this project selection we were talking about, project prioritization, so all of that information is useful. So here's the network, a lot here. The red are the largest arterial networks. We know that there's a need for north-south. Potentially where that lands is really those potential future interchange locations along I-80. The next unique one in Platteview Road, there's kind of that lighter bluish green. That's a separate planning process, but illustrated here. And then there's a range of arterials that have different proposed cross sections, roadway cross sections based upon context and what we think that ultimate volume would be. But the real end goal is coming up with something that's safe, but really affordable and really efficient. So the goal is where are the arterials going to be, and also some input into how does that tie into the dashed lines or proposed future greenway trails, for example, that would tie into either the designed multi-use trails that could go along the arterial itself, or just what's existing or planned future trail networks within each community. So we'll have the plan, but these two pieces here, a unified local and collector street network, where we had some really good conversations yesterday. That's what does that particularly that residential development look like, and what kind of roads networks are within those arterials. And the end goal is don't make somebody have to go out to an arterial to come back into another local road if you can provide that connectivity. So not prescribing anything, but really having a solid conversation on the benefits you can gain with the goal of, does it need to be a 3 or a 5 lane? Let's try to keep it to a 3 lane in that final build up, saving everybody money. And then the picture here, you don't need to try to read, but that's the red are the triggers. What are those decisions, and when do we need to make them for an interim design for a roadway and a final design? And again, a lot of really good conversation. We met yesterday, and output of that was really, let's trial by fire. Well, one of the things that the consultants are doing are giving some example projects, which is real conceptual level design. And so we're going to try it out on a couple of road networks that were recommended by the staff members. All right, that's a lot. Any questions for me on the week's episode?
Yeah, Jim. Yeah. You mentioned utilities picked on.
Yep.
Came over here. What's the interaction with the kind of the big elephant in the room, the sewer system?
Yep.
And all of that development that occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't highlight it, but that's the driver. The reason for this study, really, at least in the area that it's in, is that growth. It is taking into account those growth management zones. It recognizes there are some conservation zones in the region as well. And, you know, giving a stepwise fashion of let's not be late to the game, but also let's not get ahead of ourselves. So it does take into account that. One of the items the study will actually go through December. We're updating our traffic demand model right now. And so we're going to give an opportunity to go back and take one last look once we update current land use and kind of have a more refined future land use and road network.
To Leland's question though about complete streets, I mean, part of what the goal of Heartland 2050 was, and many of the conversations is closing that gap between land use decisions and transportation investments. I mean, we've seen areas of the region where, you know, we're 20, 30 years behind on really kind of developing the transportation system to support the growth. This is an opportunity to be more realistic and have some of these trigger points built into as development occurs. Do we have that built into? So from a growth management strategy, kind of that complete streets approach from, you know, trying to align our transportation and land use decision making. This is really, I think, a model for that. So thank you to the city of Gretna, Christine. Thank you to the city of Gretna for stepping up, and thanks to all the communities for stepping up and being financial partners in this, and active stakeholders in trying to align all of this local policy, which is not an easy task.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the important outputs is the shared understanding and shared visioning of like, this is how we're gonna do this roadway, whether it's the county that then gets annexed, right, or gets incorporated into cities, that there is a level of consistency of how that roadway is going to develop between the intermediate and long term. So there's less guesswork on the development side, less guesswork on what rule do I need to follow as a developer or commercial investment. So it gives the community, the local entities, an opportunity to have a surety of like what to expect.
To go back one slide real quick. Sure. I don't ever want to see that again. Don't bring that back. But this is information that we step is a pretty good, it's great active. And it might just even use it a couple times, the community stepping up. This is great, and thank you for bringing this to us. Thanks for the communities locally represented there. This and a good model for us to follow, but get rid of that.
We'll get you a roll plot.
We got just over 10 minutes left, so we got a few things, so let's keep rolling. Laura, you are up.
I'm gonna go fast, because I know we don't have that much time. I just wanted to talk about our upcoming Heartland 2050 Learning Site visit. So we do these generally every year. We didn't go last year. Our last trip was to Indianapolis in 2022. But we take a group of leaders from throughout the region to a peer or aspirational city just to kind of learn and bring ideas, strategies, and connections back to our area. Just a great opportunity for professional development and networking. We've got Crystal there. This is from our trip to Indy in 2022. Here's the full group picture. We have a lot of fun. This year we're going to Charlotte, North Carolina, May 6th through 9th, looking at kind of regional planning coordination, transit and trail-oriented development, historic preservation, adaptive reuse, placemaking, economic development. So we do have a couple spots still open. So if anybody is super interested in going on that, and I know it's coming up pretty quick, but if you're interested, let us know and we will talk to you about that. There is a cost. We ask that you pay our direct cost for that, which is about $2,000. So if anyone is still interested in that, just wanted to let you know that that's coming up. Membership renewal, you should have all gotten an email about your next fiscal year membership, whether you continue to serve or not. Please let us know. We'll bug you again. Our RPAC bylaws committee, thank you to those who met. Keith, Ashley, and Bruce is also on that committee. We did meet in February 28th, so just be looking for more information coming for that. As well as I just wanted to bring up, we are trying to kind of do a panel for people who are currently or have just or are thinking about updating their comprehensive plan. So if any community is doing that, I just want to put out the call that we are kind of trying to put together a panel for a future RPAC meeting to discuss that, because I know that that's something that a lot of you are going through. So I will bug you, but please let me know if you're interested. Then committee updates.
Thank you, Laura. That was
Fast. It was fast.
There's a lot in there, so don't miss that in the minutes. Thank you.
And Keith says how great site visits are. And
We had a great time in India, learned a ton, and we have actually implemented some things we learned with a great group. So I would recommend joining if you are interested. Ashley, are you still with us?
Yes.
Come on.
Hi, everyone. My update will be pretty quick. So I think we kind of discussed this last meeting, but Jeff and I and our committees have decided to start holding joint meetings for this year. One of the big focuses from the strategic planning equity engagement did last year or 2 years ago was related to housing and how equity plays a role. And so we are just going to meet together for a little bit and see if we could get some working groups going and talk more about how we could really be more engaged. So our next meeting will be next Tuesday, both housing and development and equity and engagement. I'm really excited. We're going to have a couple of guest speakers to talk a little bit more about projects that MAPA is currently in the works or partnering on with the Latino Economic Development Council, the North 24th Business Improvement District, and then also Spark. So lots of information about the connections with MAPA and community groups and how we're doing a better job getting into communities and really raising awareness and doing some good work. So we'll hear about that. And that is all that I have, because I'm sure Jeff will add something.
Thanks, Ashley.
Actually, not too much to add. We just had our meeting, the last housing and development meeting in March, and we had the Midwest Latino Economic Development, a 531 funding recipient for a housing and food entrepreneurship program on 23rd in the queue. About that project came and give an update. It's a very transformative project for that area. We can replicate that throughout the region. And then Teresa Hunter from Fair House Family Housing Advisory Services spoke, and now we're on that. Like our group is now on this new schedule with the equity committee. So April and then June, and we'll run that all the way through December, combining the two. And anything that reduces the number of meetings is like for.
Jeff, we're gonna invite you to another meeting about meetings. You don't mind.
Yeah, off the client. Okay, so in the interest of time, that's the main thing. And we have had great participation. I'd say that especially the last couple meetings, the engagement has really grown and in our committee. And so then with the combination with the EEC, I think we've got a good thing going.
That's good. Well, thank you, Ashley and Jeff, for that kind of innovation. Everything doesn't always go together, but I think the housing and engagement and the equity committee go together well.
And one other thing I would just say to Mike's conversation about the regional housing market analysis, I think that the next several months with the combination of these two committees, that's a really great space for that on a regular basis. The input coming from that analysis should come into our committees for more feedback.
Awesome. Is Eva on that committee? Eva, are you on this, on the housing committee?
Yep, and then Bree's on the engagement.
Awesome. Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, thank you. So we've
Sorry,
had,
questions for Ashley or Jeff? Sorry, Mike?
so we've had a couple good past meetings. MUD gave an update on their master plan, and OPPD came in the next meeting, gave an update. I think we've had some really engaging meetings, so I think participation has continued to increase, which is great to see. We had our meeting last Wednesday, just this last Wednesday. Heard the update from Jim on the WeStep. And then UNMC and Omaha Public Works, Krista from Omaha Public Works came in. They gave an update on the Saddle Creek campus development, which a lot is going on there. So that was a great update. Exciting. A lot of good things going on there. So we got an update on that. Looking for topics, future topics. We're meeting, brainstorming, looking at for future topics for speakers. So we want to do education, but then we have the working groups. So the working groups are the Reconnecting Communities. They are working with the Thriving Communities Assistant Grant, and I'm moving forward with applications with that group. Holistic TIP planning is still continuing. They're doing some research with UNO. Great. We got an update at one of the meetings where they gave us updates on some of the studies they're doing on the TIP planning. Responsible infrastructure, that has to do with a lot of what we talked about today. Just how do we get subdivisions get built, and then 20 years later, the roads to support the subdivisions are getting built, right? So what models, how do we look at addressing some of those issues? And then digital equity plan, that's kind of winding down a little bit with the final plan being submitted, and the state is looking at their final plan. So there's some coordination there. So we've got good working groups. Next year, we might look at going back and seeing what other working groups we may want to add if digital equity kind of drops out. So
The only point I put on the digital equity is there's currently a NOFO on the street for states to apply to implement those grants, and it's massive amounts of dollars. And we're trying to understand what priorities that we heard in our regional plan are going to be part of that. There's been some change in leadership at the NTIC on the Nebraska side. So we're trying to figure out exactly which direction they're going with some of that. So hopefully we'll have at least closing the loop on pieces of that.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Kent?
So with natural resources, we are really kind of in a transition here with that group. We have had a number, I think there's 5 different working groups or subcommittees that were part of the original MAPA or Heartland 2050 action plan. What we're doing is going to go into a process where we're reevaluating kind of what those action steps are for those various groups. So we're gonna meet on the 16th, and we'll probably then break down into a smaller group to provide some recommendations back to the larger group on that. And really, the intent is to align with the Omaha and MAPA regional climate action plans. So that's the whole intent there. So there'll be, when we meet next, most likely, at least a little bit of an update, a little more detail on it. The one working group subgroup that I chair is the solid waste working group, which has a quarterly meeting coming up next Wednesday. That group continues to grow. I'll be asking for stadium expansion funds here pretty soon. Probably just to give you a sense, they're potentially next week, maybe 40 to 50 people on a Zoom call to do that. We're talking about really kind of some interesting opportunities regarding solid waste or top trash across Nebraska to really kind of revamp and update the Integrated Solid Waste Management Act and a lot of things that go along with that, developing more sustainable recycling, household hazardous waste, et cetera, systems. So there's the legislature took some proactive action, has an interim study out there right now. It's LR 163 from the 2023 session, but it has some recommendations of really kind of potentially revamping some things. And the state's also going through with some federal funding to update waste characterization, which basically is figuring out what we're throwing away and what potentially we could not throw away and gain economic value from. So lots of interesting things in the trash and recycling realm. So I'll have more as more comes out.
Great. Who facilitates that, the working group meeting, large group meeting that you anticipate? Who's over that?
I have enlisted Mr. Saul and Mr. Charlie over here to help me with that, because I came to the conclusion that, okay, I can't do it logistically, I can't facilitate that, run the Zoom, do all of that and take notes and try to be halfway competent about that. So they are graciously going to kind of do all of the heavy lifting and I will facilitate the, kind of the MC, that discussion piece of it. And we've also then started using the AI function of Zoom to be able to crunch out a summary of that. And so far, I've been very pleased with that.
Good. Thank you. Questions for Ken?
Yes, what was that legislative number?
It's Legislative Resolution 163 that was introduced through the Natural Resources Committee in 2023. And if you just get all of me, I can send you the link directly to that study, that's final report.
Thank you. It's 12:01 right now, but I want to make sure we get any remaining MAPA updates and any.
Yep, so this just newsletter sign up, which you put in everyone, just another one. I don't know who added this one. Anybody from Transpo?
New funding opportunity due date June 17th. It's for active transportation. It's a federal award. Come talk to me or Court, probably Court. Come talk to me. Afterwards, we could talk more. Just putting it out there, adding the website for you all to have afterwards. So just come talk to us.
And if on the street. Committee updates for the good of the group. Thank you.
We do have one up here as well. Community health needs assessment. They've got an online survey out right now for anybody in Potawatomi or Cass, Douglas, RP, or SP. So it's a region-wide community health needs assessment. This is very helpful. It's kind of came out of Heartland 2050 from what I understand. So just take a moment. This will just kind of help provide them a lot of information. And then anybody else?
Thank you. Any announcements or key updates for the good of the group? Anyone? What was that slide before this one? Did I see something with
It's for that community health needs assessment going through wellbeing partners.
anybody Elsa, Terry, Ashley, anything? Okay. Thank y'all very much. I think we set a record today for the most acronyms used in this meeting and
Most P's.
And we entertained a motion to adjourn. And also we did one thing, we did something that Mike Helgerson said, in his initial comments, very simply, we discussed and prioritized regional issues. That's what we're doing. And we are learning a lot and about each other in the meantime. So thank y'all for your participation and have a good weekend. Thank you. And else adjourn.
Yeah.
Awesome.